Hi, it's Colleen Schmidt from Divination Counseling Service. Today, I want to look at the Venus ingress. I don't always do Venus, Mars, Moon. I do them every once in a while if the chart looks pretty interesting. In this particular case, I wanted to do it because, well, several reasons actually. First of all, I wanted to note the degree point of our eclipses. And I wanted to look at them within this chart because they're technically still in effect. The other factor that is of interest to us is that this is indeed an Aries point Venus, so that it will be felt all over the world. Now, with that said, well, we always feel an ingress anyway. So, how do I say that? I don't think it's so much that just because it's an Aries that the world is going to feel it, because it would feel it just changing signs regardless. But because it falls right at the Aries point, at a time when the world needs Venus, I wanted to see if Venus would literally help us with some of the, I want to say, tough stuff that lies ahead for us. And Venus only stays in a sign month, 6 weeks. It's really not very long unless it has a retrograde. And we don't have another retrograde for more than a year. So we will not be seeing another Venus retrograde. We just had one about 50 some days ago. Our next one's not to like 400 and some days. So we have ways to go. I think it will be in Aries next time. It was in Leo last time. So I want to look at not just the chart fresh, it has some interesting points. So I definitely want to look at it that way. But I want to look at it in terms of the eclipses, in terms of the last time it retrograde. And I want to make a little bit of a comparison to see how this chart will ultimately play out for all of us. Not just in terms of world events or politics, but for each individual who's here on the earth plane at this time. So with that said, I want to first of all thank you for watching the video. I'm terrible about doing that. And of course, the usual share, like, all of that, because it helps the channel. Though as an educational channel, I don't have, how do we say this? I don't have huge goals. But that's okay. I want to keep it educational. I think it's very important to all of the up and coming astrologers and all of those astrologers, such as myself, who continue to study and pursue the language of astrology. So with that said, let's check out this chart and look at a few points. First of all, starting with the actual wheel, the one where most of us are used to looking at, and determining from that wheel some of what we might be expecting in this next month, 6 weeks, and then how it might affect us from that point on. So this is what the chart looks like. A couple of things I want to point out right away. First of all, let's just look at the last station, which was 28 degrees, 35 minutes of Leo. I had a misprint in my work. I just realized it was actually the 21st, not the 20th of July. But with that said, if we look at 28:35 of Leo, it's going to put us right inside that house of associates, which for Washington, D.C., that's rather interesting, considering it's actually a really good place for Venus to fall in the 11th house, because it talks about friendships and the unity of people that work together, that are associate together, and how they, I want to say how they gel. Okay, it's a great place for a country, particularly because it makes goodwill within the associates of that, whatever it is they're dealing with. So we are looking at a chart for Washington, D.C. One of the things I do want to stress is that because of the time differences all around the world, if you live in another country, such as Australia, your Venus ingress will look differently. If you live in California, this chart will occur 3 hours later. So you have to adjust for your time and where you live, and that's really important. So I want to look at 2835 when we get to the dial, but I'm going to put it aside for the moment. What I want to look at now is a couple of things. First of all, at 2133 Libra, and 21 degrees Libra should sound pretty familiar because it was the solar eclipse. And looking at points like that are rather important. And we got two that are going to stand out. One from and by the way, that also means Washington, D.C. is about a little less, I want to say, than 2 degrees away from that eclipse, which is, somewhat of a fair distance. But that means that some people in between Washington and if you have your ingress a little bit later, your ingress is going to have the eclipse for an ascendant. In the Washington, D.C. chart, we've got hubris as the solar eclipse mark. And let's look, hubris is hubris. It's, I want to say karma, it's things coming due, it's you owe because you owe, and that kind of thing. So that's sitting right at the ascendant of this chart. And it is the point of the eclipse, which means that some areas might find all of this directly hitting that eclipse. So be mindful of that, because even DC's kind of, in that window somewhat, where we're still living that solar eclipse. And it's showing up on ingress charts. The next thing that we want to point out that also shows up here is, I like this Lilith app. I don't like it actually, but I like it in light of what's been going on in the world. Okay, there's a lot going on in the world, and it's definitely worth looking at. And, it's interesting. We could look at, okay, it's 5 degrees. And remember that 5 degrees is very important on the lunar eclipse. 5 degrees of fixed. Now, we have a Lilith Apollon. That means an intense amount of rejection. Selection, rejection it's also gender issues, which in the United States, we're really suffering from gender issues. We've always suffered. We're a misogynist country, but the Christian right has really felt the need to try to put women back in their place. This is going to be rather rough. Apollon is there, but you can see this conjunction between the Apollon and the Lilith. So Apollon is more than one. So there's more than one example of either gender misogyny or rejection. We have wars going on where our college campuses are now up in arms between, what's going on in Palestine and what's going on in Israel. And, trying to be humanitarian in that scenario, a little different than the Russian-Ukraine issue, but so there isn't a lot of people that will say Ukraine shouldn't be doing what they're doing, or, there isn't a lot of that because Russia invaded Ukraine's territory. Well, the irony is that Israel is now invading Palestinian territory because of the Hamas. Now, ironically, the Hamas is not Palestine. That's one thing that the press needs to say more. Okay, Palestine is not the Hamas. Hamas is not the Palestine. As a matter of fact, when you look at the people who are part of the Hamas, there are a lot of Africans. There are a lot of people from that other continent or from that continent. Okay, so they're not Palestinians. That's a real misconception. Palestinians are 40% children. So you're not going to get a whole lot of firepower there. However, you get a lot of victims. So lots of that gender, but also could this be gender issues in business? Could it be rejections by business? Or, we have all kinds of labor standing up situations. So there's a lot of stuff going on. Business is a big part of it. Now, if you go across the dial, there is no 5 degrees of Taurus. There is a 3 degree 59 minutes of Taurus. It's retrograde. But it does kind of put it like only 1 minute out of that kind of orb. So, as Vesta, well, what it represents is odd couples and how it's, odd couples, people coming together, odd couples. I'll give you an example. In our politics, we have 18 Republicans in the House that won in Biden areas, 18 of them. And they're having to vote for these extremists just to get a speaker of the House. So it's strange bedfellows coming together. But look around in your own life, because my feeling is that we're all going to be seeing examples of odd couples, and, especially things in business. I think business is a great place to see odd couples because you don't have to always get along very well to work together. And a lot of times people work together because there's an interest in power. Let's look at that because we can. So in this chart, we have a Kronos and Hades affected by Pluto. And you say to yourself, there's no aspect really there. I mean, it would be an opposition, but Pluto's way farther along. And so we're saying to ourselves, the only reason why there's an aspect is because of how they fell in the chart. That's why it's so important to look at these wheels, first off, because this is where we're going to see things aspecting each other on angles. Like, look at this south node on the ascendant for DC. Remember, this chart is November 8th. And it's going to have an effect for a little while after November 8th. The north node then is on outside sources. And I do believe, or the partners, and I do believe in the United States it's true because we're coming under our own oppression, a lot of it because of our own Lilith issues, not just against women, but against specific types of people, which is really stupid because in a country where we are so homogenized, there are so many different varieties of people. I mean, one of the things I love about this country is that you could walk in any place and see so much diversity of skin color and culture. And to me, that's exciting. I live always in cities because I prefer diversity. It is just something in life that I think the variety is the spice of life, But we are having a problem with that right now because when these things happen, the people who were under the rock come out and the hate is just exponential. Now, what we have here that's really interesting is this Hades Kronos, and let's talk about what that is. That is leaders that are no good. And I'm not just talking they're just bad at leadership. That would be one thing. We've had enough of that, but the purpose of things like a democratic government is that if one person can't do the job, maybe somebody else can, you see. Well, Hades Kronos is the thug. That's literally the big kingpin criminal, da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da-da. It's acting badly. Now, in a completely different sense, for those of you who might be going through medical issues and you happen to live on the East Coast, there could be some kind of transformation through your doctors, because Hades Kronos can also be doctors because they study dis-ease. So criminal elements in government come under this because they're leaders and they're Hades. but so do doctors. Okay, so when you look at Pluto on the other side, and both of these are retro, okay? So not always obvious. Let's be honest, there's a war going on in Israel right now, and let's be honest, Netanyahu was up to no good prior to this. No good at all. And so there's an example. We have an ex-president, 90 some felony conviction. He's not convicted yet. He's counts against him. Okay, so we got a lot of criminal elements running around with titles. Okay, they're authority figures. But I really feel that a lot of that is changing, and that's what we're seeing. And the form and the way in which governments work, I think everywhere, could see some of this. Although, like I say, this is more related to the United States, and Pluto is the transforming. It's also things. It's transformation, but it's also power issues, power plays. What is the one thing evil, thug-like? Right when I say that, Putin comes to mind. But those kind of authority figures are very power hungry. And our own Republican Party, which is done in my eyes, we're just seeing the implosion and the end of. If this is their last gasp. However, they're still up to stuff because we still have a little while longer till we get rid of them. And I know we will, by faith. That for a more sane, and hopefully what happens is they come back a more saner party, and that's what we're all hoping for. But there is transformation happening, and it happens that transformation is happening to power. Okay, not just because of power, or it's because of the criminal acts of power. Not far away, and then that makes Hades the midpoint. The ongoing issues of authority figures, Hades is the midpoint. It's criminal. Let's think about how the Republicans are holding their seats. Cheating, gerrymandering, which is cheating, voter suppression, which is cheating. So, I'm hoping that a lot of that, well, I know it will change over time. They're going to hit some brick walls. But I think it's really interesting that that's what's come to play. I also want to point out that Astrea, Hades, Kronos, or even Vesta, all of these actually, and the complications, we're going to get to that in a second, are all in the 9th house. Change. Also politics. But changes. So we get a lot of criminal elements in politics. I think we can even say that the new House Speaker is going to come under some great scrutiny. And I think he's got some issues that he's going to be dealing with. Now, I do want to point out, and I'm going to get to, I keep pointing that this Venus is in the Aries point. 0 degrees of Libra. But this is also 0 degrees of Cancer, also an Aries point, which means there's complications with our relationships with others. Within friendships, within associations, there will be complications, intrigues, if you will, because that's Arachne. But I'll get to that in a moment. Just staying with these angles. The thing I also want to point out here, very important, Bacchus, Westphalia and Bacchus. Okay, now a couple of things. First of all, it's been alluded to that we lost one of our actors, and it really could have been prescription drugs. And why do I say that? Westphalia is medical, and the Bacchus, drugs. Also, Kronos. So, an authority, Hades, he's had a terrible background. So, I'm wondering, I'm going to make a little prediction here, but it very well could be prescription drugs. And it was interesting because he used him to help him. It's all on that angle, by the way. Now, here's the other thing. We're trying to help with drugs to the war zone, Westphalia, the medical benefits, okay? Chronos. We're trying, and here's doctors. We're trying to get stuff to doctors. We're trying to get drugs to doctors. And our problems for the time being, and the time being is weeks, is going to be difficult, very difficult. No easy answers to any of that. Now, it also brings to mind people who are in positions of authority. Oh, the ex-president comes to mind, who we all, entertainment purposes only, although it's not really entertainment, it's kind of common. He has a drug problem. He had a cocaine problem. Now they think it's Adderall. And, you know, at his age, those things affect your heart. So I don't know how that's, but you can definitely see that there's been some deterioration, probably also mentally, because it's really hard on the body and the brain to do that. And I do believe he's getting them from doctors, and that's why I'm going to go with Adderall. So a lot of ways we can look at those 2 points. Now, I'm going to go back just really briefly to this point and the bonding of people for political reasons. Is this whole thing of here we go again, and we just did it in the House. They didn't put Jordan in because he's a whack job, and they put a whack job in. Well, they're going to realize he's a whack job. And I think that, you know, I think there's going to be some fallout. Here we go with that eclipse as a result of the bonding politically that's going to leave people, here we go again. I do not think this guy will last. I really don't. The other thing that we want to look at here is there's going to be interruptions. And we're trying to solve problems. I mean, the whole purpose of this is panacea. We're really, really trying to solve problems, particularly with our partners, which is exactly what's going on with Biden and the administration and everybody trying to make money for these wars. And so the node is directly conjunct that panacea. And so it really is, I think we're building great relationships, not with so much the governments of the people that we're helping, except for maybe Ukraine. But I think in the case of Israel, Pakistan, I don't think it's Netanyahu that we're backing here. And I definitely want to say that out loud. I definitely want to say it's the Israeli people who were, by the way, up until this war, protesting against their government. I know we want to help them. So there's also this sense of, this is, okay, they want to withdraw, okay? And I don't know that it's, we know the Republicans want to withdraw from Ukraine so they can back Putin, but I think this is something different. I think it's like the ceasefire they keep calling for, and it does run with Chiron, so it's an alternative way of behaving. It's an alternative. Here's an alternative. Let's withdraw. Let's have a ceasefire. So it's really interesting that shows up at that angle. You can look at that many ways, again, in our own personal life, in order to take care of ourselves as an alternate way of healing. Sometimes you just need to let go, unplug, and get away from it. And I do want to talk about that in that respect. I also want to say that the amount of explosive, oppressive, not just the wars, it's the behavior of the Republicans is very oppressive. And it does show up that politics and the issues within the politics, not just the people who are pro-Israel or pro-Islam, Palestine. It's not just those things. I'm for people, and I'm for countries not interfering with people, particularly when they're not your own people. Okay? And Hamas is not Palestine. Hamas is not Israel. But I think Israel has to realize that Palestine is not Hamas, and that's a tough one. So as we move on, and just getting a brief, so we talked about the war, we would expect that. Venus is our associates in there because we're a part of 2 wars now, proxy wars, however you want to call them, but we still are a part of them. And I think that one of the things that's really going on a lot is that we're questioning not just our own lives, and this would be labor unions questioning what they're getting paid. I think it's about time that the guy who does the work stands up and speaks for himself and gets paid correctly. So it is a questioning about a lot of things that are going on. And notice that that questioning is, regardless of where you live, it is related to Pluto. Now, Pluto and Sphinx, that questioning, are connected in the United States chart, but there is an opposition here that would be connected regardless of where you live. So there's a lot of questioning about transformation. Are we really transforming? When I look at the Republicans that and I know we're not going to become a Christian state. There's no freaking way. We can't. First of all, we're a mix of so many different blends of people that we've got everything from Christians all the way to atheists. And I mean everything, okay? And I don't think it's a country that could ever consider that legally, okay? So there's a lot of questioning. What's this thing about power? What is it that we're questioning? Are we questioning power? I think we are. I think we're questioning Pluto directly. We're questioning power. Then, of course, we're questioning power. Goes right back up to Kronos and Hades. We're questioning the corruption of power. And let's just, for the heck of it, we're going to move on to, I'm just trying to think if there was anything else I really wanted to look at. Money shows up a lot. Here's We the People in the 11th house. And it's, wait a minute, I said that's not where, here's where the 28 degrees is in the second house. Okay, so I said something wrong already. I'm making a lot of mistakes today. I've noticed that in my other work. 2835 degrees of, Leo is it is in the 11th house. Okay, so with that, we have that associations house, but we also have things like Rockefeller, and it's past the moon already, but it's money, and it's ironically, we're going to look at money, some of what's going to be going on. I don't think I'm going to talk about that one as much. It is about, I'm going to say 3 degrees. It looks like 4, but it's really like 3 degrees. It's a little too much for me. I like 2.5, and I'm pretty much going to stick with that. So I'm not going to go into that too much. Let's look at the dial. Let's get moving on with this. I've been talking too much. So Venus is right here. So you see the Aries Venus. You also see the Jupiter. Now you would say to yourself, wow, there's a Jupiter on this. It's a Jupiter ascendant. It's so wonderful. It's very healing. We also have an Admetus ascendant. Okay, I think it's more about wanting peace and quiet and getting your fortune through being settled. That's just, my interpretation of when you see Admetus with Jupiter. I do think there's a lot of ability to heal in all of this, particularly when you go down here to the Hygeia is also in right around that Aries point. Now, interestingly enough, okay, I'm going to do this here. Nope, that's by degree. That won't work. Watch this. Yeah, we have a Poseidon, Sun, and we have Hygeia, which is health and well-being and the well-being. And look at all that it aspects up here. It aspects Cupido because it looks good, because we are concerned about what we are seeing. And I'm going to tell you this right now. Here is a war. Much more, I mean, we did a lot of this with Zelensky and with Russia, and we've got a lot of war stories all the time. But I think what we're going to be seeing in the Gaza Strip is really going to upset us. It's already starting to upset people. They keep showing the hospitals, and the patients are predominantly children, because that's what lives in Palestine. They've been through so much that they're majority children. Now, it's also talking about how very complicated it is to try to go about these things logically. And yet that's really where the answer lies. It lies in logic. Intrigue complicates logic. Logic is complicated by the intrigue. And there is a lot of intrigue. So that was really interesting, and that is only 29 minutes off of the Aries point, making it a huge aspect of what we're going to be dealing with. This Poseidon sun says, hey, people, get ready. You're going to be seeing it all. And I do believe we are. And there's a purpose to that. It's to give a very strong message. Volcanus to Mercury. It's very important that we continue to do this. Now, over here, which is all part of it, the midheaven is only 14 minutes out of the Aries point. So whatever we do in this country, whatever we do to look to the future, is going to play a profound effect on the world and the health of the world as it reaches across to the health asteroid. Okay? 1 degree out is our partnerships and how we're solving problems. And we did talk about that because it showed up in the chart. It is going to be about solving problems with the partners and solving a partner's problems. Now, very quickly, and as I always like to do, I want to add the rest of the asteroids that are going to fall at the Aries point. And here is the very first time that I'm going to bring it up. No, second time. Money. Delero. This is about money. Money is such a factor in what's going on, and how money, Panacea and Delero, are less than a degree apart by a couple minutes. Just 2, I think, and basically saying that, you know, it's in order to solve problems, it requires money. And then we come down to, the next, these are both in retrograde, so you just don't know what kind of money they're talking about. Is this past money? Is this part of the budget? Is this part of the up-and-coming government deal? Check. Yet another money asteroid. Check. I said money, and I said, just wait till we get there. And remember that Arachne falls in here, so how much does money cause intrigue and complicate matters? That's where I am now as Arachne. Medusa runs with Arachne. So it is also about being very watchful of the money and where it goes. I think that's money oversight. It's the complication of how we oversee money. Okay? All retrograde, so it won't act normal, but it'll be there. So then we're going to come down. There, you know, this is only in by a minute. But I want you to think about this one. Lust. Who's excited about the fact that we go to war? Who's excited about intrigue? Who's excited about money? Something to think about. So we run down, and our next one, that's what I was trying to get with Rockefeller. And Rockefeller's close to the moon, not really the moon. It is it's a money asteroid, but I'm not even going to use that because already we've had 2 show up. So I'm going to go back to Merlin and Wake and Plunge. Merlin is a magician. It's the ability to actualize. Wake is to wake up and to take the plunge. And I do think that for some of us, that's going to be a really true statement. It is time, people, to actualize what it is you need and want, and then to make it happen by simply being awoke to what it is. And just so that you know, that's the 7:30 of mutable area. And all of them are within minutes of 7:30. One of them is actually 1 minute in. Another one is 13 minutes in, and the other one is 23 minutes in. So they are in. There's no two ways about it. No questioning that. Running with your Venus, as we already know, because Venus is all the way up there, is Urania, which is the asteroid of logic. And so it's telling us to be logical about our money. It's talking about being logical with regards to our friends and our social life. In other words, use more logic, less emotion in many of the decisions that we're making. They're complicated, so you need logic, not emotion. And that's something to remember. The South Node's out by quite a bit, so I'm not going to include it. But with that said, the Sun is in, as I pointed out. So our daily life is in the axis with that Venus. So a Venus Sun is great, just don't become too self-ish. Because Venus Sun tends to often put self first. Some of us need to do that. So I think you got to balance it out. Balance it out. Make sure that you're not being too selfish or self-righteous in the next month or so. But by the same token, if you're somebody who needs to stand up for yourself, this may be that time, the time to do it. The Sun is running with doo-doo. You know what doo-doo is. Crap. Okay. So the Sun is running. So we're going to be dealing with a lot of crap, people. You got to be Venus about it. That's what I mean by discern whether or not you need to be self-righteous and selfish. And you have to discern that. As we come down, Adamite is in there, and I already talked about that. We saw the asteroid Adamite popped up on the chart, and it really is a placement that tells us that we have to either stick by certain things or we're going to be stuck. So we might be stuck in some cases. And I think that that's really huge when it comes to sometimes money matters. We are stuck. I've just experienced that on a very personal level where we had gone through buying something very expensive. It was a horrible experience, the worst experience of our lives. We were traumatized. That's how bad it was. It was so bad that I don't want to buy anything else ever. But anyway, it was such a traumatic experience. But, you say, well, take it back. Don't buy it, whatever. But we love the item. So for love, we had to put up with a bunch of crap. Boy, does that sound like what we're doing? Because we were stuck. Yeah, and doo-doo on the Sun. I just gave you a whole great example. So as we move on, we're looking at Viper. And we got to ask ourselves, money is very often the Viper. Power from this chart and money from this chart tell us where the Vipers are. There's also a stopping of something. Cupido A is we need to stop something because we keep seeing it. We keep seeing it. And I explained that about that. Vipers there, Cupido, and then DRS. Stop it. Stop it. Okay? And also let that be a warning to all the megas out there. If that ex-president doesn't keep his mouth shut, the arrest could be his arrest. So you got to stop. So that's another thing, although maybe it would be what he would need, so I can't really say that. The last things that we're going to look at, and nope, there's about 3 of them. Wow, and it's a lot about our health. Okay, so the health of the internet, or how healthy is the internet for us? How are we using the internet? Is there enough safeguards on the internet? This is really an interesting. So we've got websites and Hygeia. Now, one of the best things to do if you're not well or if you're dealing with something that's not right, I always hit the internet. I mean, it's how I get out of my sewing problem. Go right on the internet. So it could be that, but I also think about the fact that there's like Truth Social, which is anything but the truth. And what is the impact of our health on sites such as that when there's a lot of lying going on? Interesting, lying would show up on a 15-degree dial here, 15 degrees away is Pinocchio. So as we move on and we look at Hygeia for our health, we also have to take care of ourselves through a scapula. And so it really ends on a health note. But it's also about the health of money, the health of spending. So with that said, please, all of you, take care of yourselves. And I wish you all good health. And until we meet again. And that goes for good health of money too, by the way. I wish you only happy reading.